everybody, this is your boy Marcellus.
This is your girl Ronnie.
It's Tim Hawley.
And Al X.
And we're coming at you with the KXVS
Morning Show.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
KXVS, The Voice of Stockton Live. The Voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
Attention, Stockton. Are you experiencing a transition in business, relationships, health, or your life purpose? I'm Darius Oliver, and I help people to look within and find clarity and direction in their constantly changing lives. Tune in and listen with me as I go deep into your patterns and personal cycles through divine numerology. Any life transition you're experiencing can be illuminated by an in-depth analysis of your chart. For the first time in Stockton, you now have access to a professional numerologist here to help you light your own way. I'm in the booth to help you find your own truth. Tune in to Divine Numerology every Friday at 3 p.m. on The Voice of Stockton.
KXVS 92.1 KXVS.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org. Want to talk politics? Tune in every Sunday at 5 p.m. as Don Mazuski and Dustin Brakeville give you the latest news.
Alongside our political analyst, Professor Sirian Villavicencion and Tamara Sakari.
I can hear you loud and clear, Governor.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
On Politics Panoramic.
What's up, everybody? This is your boy Marcellus.
This is your girl Ronnie.
It's Tim Hawley.
And Al X.
And we're coming at you with the KXVS
Morning Show.
Sit in the hot seat and keep it real with Alyssa Love.
Whether you're talking about your love life, past and current friendships, fashion trends, juicy stories, hot topics, food, entertainment, the list is endless.
But what it comes down to,
can you keep it real with Alyssa Love?
Thursday nights starting at 8:05 p.m. on KXVS 92.1 FM, The Voice of Stockton.
KXVS LP Stockton.
This program does not reflect the views of KXVS management or KXVS, The Voice of Stockton.
KXVS, The Voice of Stockton Live. The Voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Connie O'Dea from the San Joaquin Lions Club here in Stockton, California, and I am president of the club, and I welcome you to our show this afternoon. I would first like to remind everybody, and for those who are new viewers, that this is, for the Lions International, this is the centennial year. We have been Lions for 100 years. And Melvin Jones, a businessman in Chicago, Illinois, he's the one who started the Lions, asking local businessmen to come together to be able to help people in the community. And it has grown and grown and grown ever since. And if you all remember that Helen Keller had attended in around 1935, she attended one of the international conventions. And there she challenged us Lions to raise like $10,000 to help to fight blindness. And what it ended up to be was $10 million. And so that's when she began to call us the Nights of the Blind. And ever since then, blindness has been one of the major projects that we have been doing all over the world to help people with issues of sight and collecting eyeglasses and fitting people with new glasses and with their prescriptions. So she really got us started in that area. Also, I'd like to talk about the 4 major centennial services that we are doing throughout the whole world in all of the 48,000 plus Lions clubs. And we are in over 219 countries now. But there was 4 services that we want to challenge during this centennial year, and it is to work with youth in our communities, to help give them self-direction and learn new responsibilities as being a member of a community, and also to fight hunger. Many of us here in the United States are doing food drives, working with food banks and with the homeless shelters, and doing classes and teaching about nutrition in our communities. So this is a very, very important project, especially in a lot of the third world countries. One of the other areas is diabetes, especially youth diabetes. A lot of Lions are helping in conducting health fairs, going out to schools, going to having different kinds of public meetings and educating the community on youth diabetes, which is a growing issue throughout the whole United States, and I'm sure in other countries too, you may be having the same problem. So as Lions, this is one area that we can really work on in our country. And the final one is the environment. This is very important of the environment. Now, I know a lot of Leo's clubs here in the United States are doing projects for the environment, and some are helping to clean the shores and the waterways, rivers, and lakes, and in our communities. Here in the Stockton area, we have, I don't know how many hundreds of miles of waterways with what we call the Stockton Delta. And the water from here in Stockton, California, and Sacramento, California, which is our capital, we have very large ports. And here in Stockton, we have one of the largest deep water ports, and ships come from all over the world. And so we want to keep our environment clean and keep our waterways clean. And so a lot of people are creating projects in that particular area. And a lot of people are planting trees in their communities and doing other wonderful things for environment. One of the things that is happening here in California for this last project of environment is that the Arnold Lions Club has taken on the project that affects actually the whole United States, but especially in California. We have here in California a beautiful park called the Calaveras Big Tree State Park. In this park is a trail that you can walk and go through the whole park and see the beautiful, beautiful redwoods and the beautiful trees. And what is happening right now with Arnold leading the pathway, as we say, they are doing a reconstruction and an upgrade for ADA accessibility of this trail. Lions International has provided a great many of the funds, and what the Arnold Lions Club and the Lions Club here in District 4A1 and throughout the state of California, they are trying to match those funds so that we can continue to get help through the international office. part of this environmental project is to, like I said, to make sure that the trail is totally accessible. And there'll be stations along the trail where you can stop, and there's video, not video, but audio recordings that a person can listen to who has visual impairment. And there's also Braille signs. And what we're especially doing is to make sure that at each one of the stopping areas that there is an audio, so that the person who is there can listen to what they're supposed to be seeing that they can't see. It tells about the trees, and you're able to touch the trees and be able to understand and to see without vision what is the beautifulness of this park. And also there is a touching garden. When you go to the visiting center where the trail ends, like I said, there is a touching garden, and there people with visual impairment can touch different plants, and then there's an audio that says what the plants are and what the trees are. And there's another area that is totally accessible, truly made accessible for wheelchairs and walkers, and it's an area where there's a beautiful creek and benches where you can sit down and listen to the water and hear the birds and your whole environment. So this is a fantastic project that's going on here in California. And if you want to get more information about it, you can go to the website. Let me find it here. Okay, this is called the Sensory Trail Upgrade Project Fund, and they are taking donations, and you can go to Calaveras.communityfoundation.org. There you can make donations, and you can also see how the project is progressing, and it is a wonderful environmental project for our centennial year. And for some more information, the big thing that's coming up on New Year's morning is the annual Rose Parade, Rose Bowl Parade. And every year, Lions has a float in this parade. This year, the theme for our float is preserving our environment. So I'm quite sure there is going to be some historical landmarks on the float, and possibly something to do with our sensory trail for preserving our historical landmarks. There will be Leos depicting planting of the trees, which is a big project. And this float is 35 feet long, and it will also include an animated water wheel. And as you know, International pays half of the amount, gives us half the amount for the float every year, and all of the clubs throughout the world give donations to pay the remaining amount to build our beautiful float. So I wanted to also tell you that our first float was in 1992, and on New Year's Day of the Tournament of Roses Parade, and that is held every year in Pasadena, California. And I'm sure many of you have seen it on television because it is going into 80 plus different countries every New Year's morning. So I hope you have a chance to see it and enjoy the float and give support to it. Also, for some local information, this is the time of the year where many of the Lions clubs throughout the United States and throughout the world have crab feeds. This is a big fundraiser every year here in Stockton, California. one of our clubs, Stockton hosts Lions, the day before the Super Bowl football game. They have what they call the annual Super Bowl crab feed. And this year will be the 21st annual crab feed. So I hope that you will get the information. You can go to the Stockton Host Lions website on Facebook and get all the information. It is going to be on June 23rd, the day before the Super Bowl. Oh, no, excuse me, not June 23rd. It's February 3rd of 2018, and it'll be at 6 o'clock on Saturday at the Presentation Church here in Stockton. So, and this is a big event, but we also have another wonderful crab feed coming up, which will be on January 20th here in Stockton, California. It's hosted by the Stockton Phil Am Lions Club. That is the Filipino American Lions Club. That will be on the January 20th, and it'll be at 5:30. You can go to their Facebook page and get all the information, or you can go to my Facebook page. It's Connie O'Dea. Now, it's a kind of a crazy name, and it's crazy spelling, but Flolo is a Norwegian name, and it's spelled Flollo, then you put a dash, and then it's O'Dea. That's capital O, apostrophe, capital D-E-A. I have to spell all these things out because they're crazy names. Okay, and you will get all this information about the crab feeds. And the next announcement I want to make is the Student Speaker Contest here in California. This is a fantastic scholarship program, and it is only held in California, but it's something to think about for some of your clubs throughout the world and anywhere in the United States. Every year there is a governor's meeting, and they come up with a new title, new theme for the Student Speaker Project, and it's students that are from freshman to senior. It can be a public school, a private school, a charter school, homeschooling. Foreign exchange students can also participate. And this year we have quite a theme. This year it is called Integrity and Civility. Play what role in today's society? So I hope that you will participate here in California with this wonderful project, and the winning student of this contest will get over $22,000 in scholarship money. And for those of you up in the Motherlode country of California, the Sonora Lions Club on the 2nd of December 2nd, they are having their annual pancake breakfast at Applebee's there in Sonora, California. So please participate in that. And then I've been talking to you about this for several weeks now. Here in District 4A1 in California, we have a camp for the hearing impaired, and it's called Camp Pacifica. It's a beautiful, beautiful camp. It's near Yosemite, California, and in the wintertime it does snow, and it is a beautiful camp. All kinds of activities for students, and it's also open for organizations or families to be able to rent the park, the camp, with cabins that are fully housing with bathrooms and showers. And then we have some for the summertime that don't have the showers. You have to use the public shower. But what they're asking right now is during the summer, clear through February 27th of 2018, they need weekend camp sitters. Now, the camp is totally ready for RV hookups, and it's free. So if you're interested, please get in touch with me here at our radio station, or get in touch with past district governor Russ Custer, and the phone number is 209-410-4102. That's a great weekend, or even a week, that your family can take for a wonderful, wonderful vacation. Finally, we have here in California, we have our annual convention. It's the Lions Club International Multi-District 4 Convention. It's going to be at the Crown Plaza in San Diego, California, February 5th through February 11th of 2018. And you can find out all the information about it by going to Multi-District 4 website for all the information about this convention. It's going to be a great convention, and I tell you that if you can get your reservation in before midnight on December 31st, you will get the Super Saver package. You will get everything for $250 only. So that is a great deal. And today I have a wonderful guest, someone I've known for many years, and I would like to introduce you to Dave Frederickson. He lives currently in Stockton, and I'm glad to have you here today, Dave.
Well, it's nice to be here, Connie. I'm glad to hear that the Lions Club is still alive, well, and doing a lot of good things.
Oh, definitely. We definitely are doing that. And I would like to tell you a little bit about Dave Frederickson before I kind of turn the mic over to him with a few questions I have. But he has been a visiting professor.
Yes.
At the University of Pacific for many, many years. And he also has, at the University of Pacific, what he was teaching was communications. And he was also a faculty advisor for the University of Pacific's newspaper called the Pacifican. Am I saying that right?
Yes,
Pacifican
that's right.
Student Newspaper. And he has done a lot of great things at University of Pacific. And one of the things I know that you have helped with is the Veterans Yellow Ribbon Program. So could you tell us a little bit about that? Because Lions all over, I know in our district and many other districts and throughout the states, are helping veterans as much as we can.
Well, Connie, the Yellow Ribbon Program is a wonderful program that is available on both the campuses at Delta College and at Pacific. And at the University of the Pacific, I think we probably have in the neighborhood of over 100 students involved in it at a given time. But essentially what it is, it's like the GI Bill. Those young people coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq and other places in the world from their service with the armed forces are able to go to college, to university, with the support and financing of the federal government. And the program at Pacific has been very robust. It has been around for, I guess, about 6 or 7 years now.
Right, I think so, yeah.
And at the outset, there was a fellow named Bob Beachell who was very instrumental in getting the program underway, and a number of other folks worked with him on that. And they got the program underway. They got it running. I had several really great students in my own classes from that program.
Right.
And a couple of years ago, they were able to get a seed grant from Office Depot, I believe,
From
for
Office
several
Depot?
several thousand dollars.
For those of you outside of the United States, the
Office Depot.
Office Depot, excuse me, is a business. It's a franchise also, and it sells office supplies.
Yes.
Very, very big. Oh, and that's great. They got a grant from them.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, Office Depot recognizes the need for leadership training.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they recognize that these returning veteran students are a tremendous source of potential leadership.
Right.
And so they've been very supportive throughout the country. And so a couple of years ago, they were able to open a veterans study center on campus. It's right in the heart of campus, and it has a facility there for veteran students to come in and to have access to study materials and tools and a place to be during the day.
They have computers there too, right?
Yes, they have computers, and they have support staff and tutoring, and it's a wonderful facility that students can take advantage of.
Now, does Delta College have, do you know if
they do.
They have a veteran center too now?
They have their center, and I believe that it's been up and running maybe even a little bit longer than Pacific's, but both campuses are very welcoming to former uniformed service personnel who come back and want to take advantage of the veterans' benefits for their education.
Well, Delta College, for those of you who don't know, is our community college here in Stockton, California. And it has been growing and really providing a lot of good service for our veterans. Well, that's great. Now, you have quite a history with our federal government, right?
Well,
and with our presidents.
I guess you could say that I'm a retired bureaucrat.
Okay.
People don't like to use that term too much, but I think it's a fine term.
Well, it used to be used a lot, a whole lot.
That's what people in the federal government do. And I have had the very good fortune to serve in the federal government at the most senior executive level through the administrations of 4 presidents. And
which presidents were that?
Actually, I'll take that back. I've been in the administration of 3 presidents. I served in the White House first with President Ford.
Oh, okay.
And I was on the Ron Nesson staff in those days,
now,
who was the press secretary to the president. Ron Nesson. He was the press secretary to the president. And so that was my introduction to the White House, was serving with Ron Nesson. And we were there during the Ford term. Then later on, during the years of Ronald Reagan, I served not only the White House, but I also served in the administration.
What capacity?
Well, I served first as the assistant administrator for communications at the Small Business Administration.
Now, what did that consist of?
Well, I was responsible for all of the public affairs and all the media relations and all of the communications activities of the Small Business Administration throughout our 110 district offices and 10 regional offices.
So
I had a staff of about 120 people that served in that capacity.
So within the administrations, within the government of each president, we do have a small business administration. I know people know about small business administrations or small business, I don't know what they call them in every city.
Well, the United States Small Business Administration was established by law at the behest of President Dwight David Eisenhower.
Oh,
this was one of his principal accomplishments as president, because he saw the value of small business to the welfare of the United States. And I'm rather pleased to say that I had the opportunity, which is kind of unique, to oversee the celebration of our 30th anniversary in 1983. And then I was back there and had the opportunity to have a major role in the celebration of our 50th anniversary in 2003 and 4.
And that's of the
U.S. Small Business Administration. And I really enjoyed my service with the SBA because it is the backbone of America's economy. Small business.
Small businesses, yes.
We just had Small Business Saturday.
Right, and that's been being pushed in all the communities, I guess, throughout the United States to shop at your small businesses and in your communities, yes.
Well, people don't always understand it, but the biggest job generator in America is small business. Small business is is what we used to call the incubator of jobs and economic opportunity in this country. So it's a very vital function.
Right.
Here in Stockton, there is a small business development center on the campus at Delta College.
Oh, I didn't know that.
For many years, a good friend of mine, Jillian Murphy, was the director of that center. The Small Business Development Center is designed to offer counseling, support, and services to startup small businesses and to continuing entrepreneurs as they build their businesses. And it's a wonderful service, and most of it is free for the asking.
Oh, for
now,
goodness sakes.
Some things they do charge some small fees for, but generally speaking, anybody considering a business, anybody thinking about a small business entrepreneur effort can go to that SBDC at Delta College, and they can get a lot of help and a lot of guidance that will help them avoid the pitfalls that so many small business people fall into when they start out.
Well, that's wonderful to know. That is absolutely wonderful. I'm sure maybe some other communities in some of the other states and even California may have the same
yes,
programs.
they do. The small business development centers are all associated with a college or university, and they are managed by people who are really committed to small business. They're in partnership with the SBA because now they have their own organization, but you can certainly find them in your community. If there's a college or university close to you, they probably have one. And not all colleges, not all universities host them, but they're mainly in districts and regions of the country that correspond to the SBA districts and regions.
Well, that's wonderful to know, especially when you are trying to start a new business. It would be nice to know that there is a place like that in the community where you can go and get questions and get support, and because people need that when they're trying to start a business.
They do, and with the SBA and the Small Business Development Centers, there has been a huge focus in recent years on assisting those folks coming from the minority communities and from women business owners. Women business ownership is the fastest growing area of small business in America today.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, yes. Women business owners are really the tip of the spear when it comes to the growth of small business in this country today.
My goodness. Well, you hear that? You have an opportunity. It is a great time when women are moving ahead and getting these opportunities. That's wonderful. Now, what other jobs did you have while you were with the Federal Service?
If you want the laundry list.
He's got a big laundry list, let me tell you.
I'll tell you. My mother used to say it was a shame I couldn't keep a job.
Okay.
Because she didn't really understand how this whole business works. But effectively what happens is that when you are appointed by the president, presidents have a way of moving you around.
So you've held positions where the president appointed you?
Yes, I have been an appointee. And I have served President Ford. I was in the White House for that whole time. But then with President Reagan, I was in the Small Business Administration. Then I went to the U.S. Department of Education, where I worked for Secretary Bill Bennett. And I was there because we were working on responding to a nation at risk. And so I was in the...
Now, what does that mean?
Well, in the previous secretary's tenure, Secretary Terrell Bell, he had a national commission that did a report called The Nation at Risk.
And this was in what year?
That was in 1983-84.
Okay.
And what it did was to identify a lot of the deficiencies that were common across the country in our educational system. And so during Bill Bennett's secretaryship, we were working very hard to find innovative solutions to that problem of what was going on in the educational system. And so I was sent there to the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education to help to focus and to market and to message the needs of the nation's educational system. We worked in a series of projects called What Works?
What Works?
In education,
okay.
Yes.
Again, what age group and what years of school was this that you
Well,
were
the Office of
working on?
Elementary and Secondary Education is responsible for elementary and secondary education in America.
And secondary would be the
High school, through high
Okay.
school. So we were primarily looking at pre-K, pre-kindergarten through the 12th grade. That was our primary focus. And of course, that office also has within it the Office of Indian Education. So we were looking at
Indian, you're talking about
we're talking
Native
about the Native
Americans,
Americans, and we were
the
looking
United
at
States. Uh-huh.
at the educational condition of the schools in the Native American communities as well.
Could you elaborate a little bit about what you discovered in the Native American education? Because we don't hear very much about Native Americans in the main media or so forth.
Well, of course, they have really their own educational network within the Native American community and the Native American nation, and they suffer some of the same problems that we suffer in the mainstream educational system. There's always a challenge of parental involvement, having
Right.
parents involved in children's education. That's number one. Really is having parents involved. That's a key to any educational effort.
Now, how could you give maybe some suggestions to Lions? Now, a lot of Lions clubs do have school projects, and they do go out and, like Flag Day, do a presentation to elementary students of what the flag means and how the flag came to be the United States of America symbol. And we call that Flag Day. And they also, a lot of Lions clubs do reading programs. And they go out and help with reading and with tutoring in elementary schools. And then, of course, we sponsor Leos in high school, which are high school students that are Lions. And they basically follow the same standards as Lions do, the adult Lions. And so what do you think in today's school and things that you had discovered in your studies that Lions, like our organizations, could do in schools?
Well, I think there's no question about it that reading is fundamental. As Barbara Bush likes to say, reading is fundamental.
Right.
And right here in the Stockton area, as you may know, the Beyond Our Gates program at the University of the Pacific has been focused with the Community Council for the last 3 or 4 years on reading as a principal effort, because what educators have learned is that young people need to learn to read by the 3rd grade.
Definitely.
If they don't learn to
agree with
read
that.
by the 3rd grade, then they're going to have a very serious time in pursuing their educational opportunities. I think the common saw these days is reading by third in order to learn beyond. And what they've learned is that from the preschool through the third grade, youngsters are learning how to read. They're learning the skills of reading and the comprehension of reading. So that after that, starting with the fourth grade on, they're able to read and comprehend the subject matter that they have to master in order to really acquire a good education.
Now, I'd like to ask you this one question. Since you have been, you're a professor and you've worked in education almost all your life, right?
No,
but how many years actually being a professor?
Well, I was visiting.
Whatever?
Well, I started coming back to the university to lecture in the early 90s.
Oh, okay.
As a visiting lecturer.
Right.
And then starting in 2005, I became a full-time visiting professor, which I continued to do for over a decade. So about 20 years altogether.
Oh, my goodness. Well, what I wanted to ask you and get your viewpoint, I'm talking about education. Currently, they are not teaching children, how to do cursive. That's handwriting, only printing. I have a lot of thoughts about that. I disagree with that concept totally. But in your reading, with the reading and the learning at young age, we have so many young people now that can use computers and laptops and play these games on computers better than adults can. Do you have any thoughts about that kind of education? I mean, I see children ages 3, 4, and 5 years old using small computers.
Well, it's very hard for me to get my head around because I guess I came up through that system where we used to say that every great idea started on a scribble text pad.
Yeah.
Yellow pads were my principal work tool for the first number of years of my career.
Right.
But I guess that in the great scheme of things, there could come a time when cursive writing, as we call it, or as we refer to it, might not be as useful as it has been for centuries. But it does concern me because I've had students in my class who couldn't use cursive writing. They printed everything. And I have to tell you, it's very hard to read and it's very hard to proof, I mean, when you're doing it. I think that probably there's a good reason to continue to have handwriting in some form or other for a long time to come. I remember that I was at a book discussion one evening at the National Press Club with Cokie Roberts and her husband Steve.
Oh, yes, I've met her.
And she recounted to us how hard it's becoming for researchers and authors to go back and look at the original sources, at the original material. She said one of the fascinating things when you go back and do, as she does, historical research, is that you can actually go back and look at the handwritten margin notes of people.
Right.
You know, like on the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence or historical documents of that nature. And she said, today you can't do that because what happens is when you're composing, when you're writing on the computer, you just delete that. It just winds up getting...
Yeah, that's right.
Because each time you update, each time you save, then that previous just kind of goes away.
So would you say we're losing a little bit of history?
Yes. She feels like that's a real potential hazard. I mean, there are ways to avoid that. There are ways to save all those things, but it's much tougher now.
Well, when you were doing this educational project for primary and high school ages, the elementary and high school ages, and that was back in 1985, 86. Yeah. Okay. Can you remember or recall some of the issues that you found that were
Well,
the problems?
reading and writing.
Reading and writing.
It was that was one of those were two of the very basic weaknesses in the system, were that students were not learning to read and write as they should, and as a consequence, their ability to comprehend and absorb new information was impaired as they went along. Yeah. And of course, the other thing was just the disconnectivity that was going on in families, where youngsters were not having that parental involvement that they need.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think reading, I remember myself when I used to go to what you would call, some call it daycare, some call it preschool. I was like 4 or 5 years old. I was reading. And the first book I read was Fuzzy Wuzzy Was a Bear. I still remember that. But by the time I started school, in kindergarten, I could read. Now, I have nieces and nephews that are 18 years old that cannot read very well at all.
Well,
and
I know.
It's very sad. I mean, it's sad to see what's happening.
I know in my own case, in West Texas as a youngster, I had an uncle who taught me to read with the Sunday Funnies. He literally taught me to read reading the Sunday Funnies. And at least a year or more before I started at school, I had my library card.
Oh,
and
fantastic.
My mother would take me to the library every couple of weeks, and I would check out as many books as they'd let me.
I remember those days.
I became addicted to the Hardy Boys mysteries, and then later to Nancy Drew mysteries.
Well, I was addicted to Nancy Drew myself.
Because I ran out of Hardy Boys, and I also remember checking out a lot of picture books. In those days, there was a well-known cowboy artist who did these cowboy cartoons.
Oh my!
And in West Texas, that was popular, and
of course
he had collections that he had in books, and I would check those out. But yes, that was reading was something that I lived for at that time. That and serial radio.
Oh,
every afternoon I was home to listen to the Lone Ranger or Sky King or
Red Rider.
All of those things.
Oh, I remember those days. We didn't have TV; we had the radio.
That's right. And of course, I've often told my students in my writing classes that's how we developed our imagination, because radio was the theater of the mind, and whatever you could envision, that was what was going on.
Now, in your professor work at University of Pacific, you were in communications.
Yes.
And I'd like you to share with us about what you feel is the most important thing to learn to have good communications.
Well, the most important, in my mind, the most important attribute of communications is your listening skill. As a broadcaster and as a television host, and for many years, I learned that listening was the most important tool I had, because it's only through listening that you hear where the story goes.
Right.
And then I think the second thing is being observant, curiosity, and the power of observation. Just being aware of everything around you, to discover. I mean, I've always told my students that the best creative product comes out of whatever it is you're working on, by doing the research, by getting the familiarity, by getting the feeling of it.
Right.
So that in turn triggers the creative process in my mind. You have to let the story tell itself. You have to let the story come to you, and then develop it, flesh it out, and make it real.
Yes, very good, very good. So, when you have had such a long history now with the federal government, and in working with 4 administrations, president administrations, can you share with the audience here some of the most important and exciting kind of work that you have done?
Well, that's a very
Under
hard
which
thing to
president?
pinpoint. Well, of course, when you're in that environment, every day is exciting days. I was saying to someone the other day, I was looking back on, I couldn't believe all the stuff that I went through over the course of years. I mean,
I can imagine.
With President Ford, of course, we were there for the bicentennial of the United States. And so every week we were celebrating the bicentennial of the United States. Everything from little ladies presenting their quilts to him, all the way up to the 4th of July weekend in New York Harbor and Washington, and in my case, Monticello. One of the most moving things I've ever done with the president was a swearing-in ceremony at Monticello on the morning of July 5th.
Now, can you tell our audience who don't know, what is Monticello?
Monticello is the home place of Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
And we were there on the morning of July the 5th, 1976, to let the president swear in 456 new American citizens. And that was
that must have been exciting.
One of the most moving things I've ever seen. It was absolutely just gave you goosebumps. And then, of course, there were other times with him. I think I just posted on Facebook the fact that I had the good privilege to spend Thanksgiving weekend, 1976, with the President and Vice President Rockefeller and their wives at the Rockefeller's estate in Pecanico Hills, New York.
And what year was this?
This was 1976.
1976.
This was the bicentennial
year, right, okay.
And the Vice President invited the President up to his place for Thanksgiving weekend. And so it was a wonderful experience. And they celebrated by going to church there at a beautiful little church, all of the stained glass windows of which were produced by Marc Chagall. Except one, I can't think of who did the rose window. I should know, but anyway, that was a significant moment to go through with him, and of course, then I worked for Ronald Reagan for a total of almost a decade.
Oh my goodness!
And so I don't know how I would really narrow down. I guess that one of the most significant occasions I had with him really was the first inaugural. I like to say that Fran Lewin and Helen Thomas were my dates for the inaugural ball that year, because it was my job to manage and to plan the pool coverage. This is the White House travel pool that goes with the president every. It's my job to plan and manage the pool coverage of the entire list of balls.
And there's a lot of them.
There were 11. There were 11.
Oh my gosh!
And we were in white tie and formals, and so Helen and Fran and I and the other members of the travel pool spent the night, and it was raining and cold. We spent the night getting in and out of our press vans in full formal attire, and it was quite an interesting experience. I don't think you lived till you've been to 11 inaugural balls with the president and the First Lady.
Gosh.
But that was one that was a significant moment, and there were many others with him. I mean, we had, I think one of the most interesting experiences with him was going to Ireland. I was with President Reagan.
With President Reagan to
yes,
Ireland?
I was fortunate enough to go to Ireland and actually be a coordinating producer in planning the television coverage with the Irish network, RTE.
Oh my gosh.
And we planned live coverage from Wheels Down in Shannon to Wheels Up in Dublin. So for 3 days, we had the president live on Irish TV.
And you were in charge of getting all of that done.
Well, I was there responsible for coordinating.
Yes.
With all the different elements that we had to do. And of course, another huge experience with him was Liberty Weekend.
And that Liberty Weekend is what?
Well, that was the celebration of the centennial of the Statue of Liberty.
Oh my gosh.
And I had the dream assignment. I went down to Norfolk, Virginia, and I joined the carrier Kennedy, and I sailed up the East Coast and planned
That's the United States Naval vessel.
Yes, that's the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy.
Oh my gosh.
And so I sailed up the East Coast with the Kennedy, planning for the president's address on the 4th of July. I was there as the coordinating producer between the White House and ABC News. And so I got to, when we got to New York Harbor, we sailed in. And by the way, we barely got under the Verrazano Straits Bridge by 18 inches.
Oh my goodness.
The XO had to plan it exactly right for the tide so that we passed under. And we literally had like 18 inches of clearance as we went under the.
Sounds like going through the Panama Canal.
and then when we got into New York Harbor, it was my great fun and pleasure to stand on the deck with the XO and the skipper and my counterpart from the advance office and plan exactly where we were going to anchor the ship so that the picture was there. The Lady Liberty.
Oh my gosh.
And so then the night of, that was the greatest fireworks show I've ever seen. We had 5 barges positioned around New York Harbor. And Tommy, it was Tommy Walker's he's a famous fireworks consultant. Mm-hmm. It's his last big show. And they came from every direction.
Oh.
And the center point was over the Kennedy, of course.
Oh my goodness! What an experience that must have been.
That was very, very, very much so. And I guess the most significant, probably the most significant event that I did with him was his funeral. I had the honor to be at the Capitol Dome for 4 days, where I managed the press coming and going.
And that was for
his lying in state, for President Reagan.
For President Reagan. Oh,
and then I had the great privilege to be in the motorcade on the final day when we went from the Capitol to the Cathedral to Andrews Joint Air Force Base.
So what an experience.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time to be involved. And
well, you certainly have had an interesting career. I could talk for hours with Dave here because we've been friends for several years now, and we also have been friends through an organization called the United States Navy League, and currently with our Stockton Navy League Council, Dave is our president. And can you briefly tell what we do on December 7th in the past?
Well, in some years when it has been, the calendar's been right, we have had a major dinner or luncheon for Pearl Harbor.
Remembrance of Pearl Harbor.
To remember it. And of course, it's coming up, and it will be here before we know it.
Right.
But the purpose of the Navy League, for those who may not know it, is to support the sea services and the members of the sea services, and through that the families of the sea services. So the Navy League was really formed by Teddy Roosevelt.
Right.
And
that's President Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes, President Roosevelt. And through all those years, the Navy League has been there to support the Navy and the Marine Corps and the Coast Guard, and to make sure, and the Merchant Marine, people sometimes forget about them, but
yeah, the
they're
Merchant
sea
Marines,
services
right.
too. And so the Navy League has been right there to support both the uniformed members of the sea services as well as their families, and that's how we got into the Yellow Ribbon program. In the local chapter of Navy League, we decided that we wanted to support these students coming back and doing what they're doing. And so we've had a wonderful relationship with them in the recent years.
That's great. Dave, I could have you here for hours talking about the wonderful things you've done and are still doing, and with the Navy League and all of your years of career with our federal government and what you've done. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I think when you're talking about the reading program, that falls right into a lot of what we're doing for our centennial year of the Lions Club in working with youth. And all of you who are out there and clubs that out there and throughout the world, I'm sure that you're doing some of these programs with the youth that entail reading programs or at some type of educational programs or developing new Leo's clubs. And so we kind of fall right into that need in the educational area that you've been talking about.
Well, I don't know if this is a good advertisement for you or not, but I can tell you that I was a Lions Club speech contestant, and
oh, that's right.
I didn't win, but I did win one round, and then I lost at the regional.
And you also have been a judge at my student speaker contests.
Not only that, but the Lions were kind enough to give me a scholarship when I graduated from Tulare Union High School, which helped to finance the education that led to all these rather bizarre experiences that I've had in life.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's one thing I didn't know about you.
Yes.
Well, see, I think with our Lions Club here, in the past few years of doing the student speaker contest, I have found about 4 people to judge our contest that had already participated, like you just said, as a student speaker contestant.
Yes.
And that's fantastic because this program leads students to so many outstanding opportunities in the future by learning how to speak in front of people, take a topic, research it, and then present it.
There are 3 things about the Lions Club program that were very important to me. One is they force you to focus on the importance of the theme for the year.
Right.
And I think this theme of integrity and civility are desperately needed in this country today.
It's going to be interesting to see what the students come up with. Yes.
And the second thing is it forces you to do honest-to-goodness research. You have to go and, I don't remember the topic my year, but I know it stretched me. I had to go to the library and spend a lot of hours. It's kind of like the debate team. You really have to do some serious time in the library, and you really have to think about what you're doing. And of course, the third thing is it gives you an opportunity to actually develop some skills in the area of public speaking and presentation and presence, and that's a very good thing for young people today.
Exactly. Well, Dave, I want to thank you very much for being on our show today. And I'm quite sure I will be asking him to come back because he's got so much information to share with us. And I'd like to have you back to talk more about your experience with the student speaker contest. It's always good for students. Now, I will say that Dave and several other professors have been judges at my contests, and I have had them get up and talk to the students and tell them of their experience like you have just shared with us. And it's made a very big impact on the students to see here they are starting with with the student speaker contest, and then to see these professors and educators and lawyers, people of very, very high education, where this experience in student speaking helped them to get to where they are. So I hope all of you in California, the clubs here will have your student speaker contests, and perhaps other clubs out there would like to look at our webpage for MV4 under student speaker contests and get ideas for your own areas. So I want to thank you again, Dave.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
It's always fun to get together.
And you promise to come back?
Well, I can probably make that possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you to everyone out there, and we will see you on next following Monday, 2 o'clock, for another show of Lions We Serve Live. Thank you. Bye-bye.
KXVS on 92.1. Coming soon.